Sorry about the addition of an extra video. There was a computer glitch, so I had to start recording over again. But you should have just got done watching a video about comparative anatomy, specifically vestigial organs, as a line of evidence to support Darwin's theory of evolution. The fourth line of evidence that we can use is called comparative embryology, where scientists compare the embryological stages of different species of organisms. What scientists have discovered is that early stages of life are very similar. There are common cells and tissues growing in the same way. If you look down at this picture below, these are the embryological developmental stages of a tortoise and a chicken, and you will notice that they look very similar through their stages of embryological development. There are some definite similarities. In most stages of most organisms' embryological development, we all have gill slits called pharyngeal gill slits, which would be right in this area here. A post-anal tail, which we as well as humans have in our embryological development, the location of the eye spot. So a lot of similarities in how species develop from zygote to embryo. Here are some more pictures of a fish versus a rabbit versus a gorilla. So you can see very similar in structure. Again, chicken, turtle, rat. And if you take a second and click on these two links, it will take you to a couple of different, one's an animation and one is a article about comparative embryology. So take a second and look at those two links. Good. The last piece of evidence, well, actually I don't think it's the last, there's one more I think I added on here, but the most significant piece of evidence I think is the molecular record, and what that involves is comparing DNA sequences. DNA doesn't lie. Truth is told in DNA. And so scientists can literally take DNA sequences from two different species and compare them and look for differences. Likewise, they could also study protein sequences as well, amino acid sequences, because we know that DNA codes for proteins. You might say to yourself, well, wait a minute, we're a lot different from a lamprey, as humans we are, but we can compare these sequences because all living things use the same genetic code. Remember this, UUU codes for phenylalanine in humans, as does in a flower, as does in a dog and a rat. So that piece of unity has allowed scientists to use the molecular record as a line of evidence to support evolution. This is a set of molecular data, and what they have used here are the number of amino acids that differ from a human hemoglobin polypeptide. So hemoglobin is found in red blood cells and it carries oxygen. So all of these species have the sequence of amino acids for hemoglobin, but there are 8 differences between us and the rhesus monkey, 27 between us and a mouse, and so on. So the less differences, or the least amount of differences, the more closely related we are to that organism. So we are, according to this data, most closely related to the rhesus monkey, least closely related to a lamprey, which is a jawless fish. You can then, I'm going to skip that, you can then take those, that molecular data, and you can make evolutionary trees to show who's more closely related to who. You can compare common genes, you can compare common proteins, you can go either way with DNA evidence. And this is just, like I said, this is taking the information from the chart and putting it onto an evolutionary tree. Family trees, these family trees are a great way to show closely related species coming from a common ancestor. The closer the two species are, the closer they will be found on the tree. So when they branch near each other, they are more closely related than an organism that doesn't branch near that species. This is actually taken from Darwin's field notes when he was on the HMS Beagle. I think this was published in his book On the Origin of Species, but he was working out these trees even in his notes, in his data. And you can see it looks very much like what we see as an evolutionary tree today. So evolutionary trees, you should be able to understand them. You should be able to read them. Couple of things. Every letter is a species. Every node is a branch point per se. So I did what's called speciated into organisms J and K. The two organisms branch off the same node are more closely related. So for example, species J and K are more closely related to species K than species K and M. Let me try that again. J and K are more closely related than species K is to M because they branch off at the same point. Species H, C, D, these are all extinct species. They're not alive in present time. So you can see between 50 and 75 million years ago, species C and D became extinct. Another thing that you might want to look at in this tree is who's the common ancestor for all of these species, and that is species A. They are at the base, the trunk of the tree. The last piece of evidence to support Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection is artificial selection, which means selective breeding. We are able to recreate Darwin's thought process artificially. We are able to selectively choose the best traits that we want to see in the next generation. We've been doing this for decades. Like we talked about when we were in the genetic engineering unit, this is wild mustard seed. We have selectively bred wild mustard seed to form several different types of vegetables of the cabbage family. So we can, rather than nature selecting, humans have selected. We can artificially select organisms to create change over time. The descendants of the wolf, the modern day dog. We have artificially selected the traits that we want to see in those offspring, and then obviously forced breedings for those to occur. So those are the pieces of evidence that support Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. The two main pieces of evidence that you're going to see pop up the most are the fossil record and also the molecular record. Those are the two critical pieces of evidence that support his theory. The rest all as well, but for our level in the Regents exam, those two are the most significant and the most that you'd see on a Regent. So, that's it for today. And please, please, please make sure that you watch this a couple times if you have to. You will be using this information in class tomorrow. So I won't be teaching this. We're going to learn by doing tomorrow.